This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work responding to another Ask Prof Wolff question from our Patreon community. And this one comes from Max Orr. Max asks us about the relationship between Marxism on the one hand and market socialism. He's kind of on the latter side, but he is respectful of the Marxist position and wants to know how to put these two together and even whether that's possible. Okay, let's go. Market socialism is a term used when a socialist society accepts and uses markets to exchange goods and services between companies and between the public and the corporate sector, the enterprise sector. And so it's widespread around the world. Many of the socialist systems we see are clearly comfortable with and accepting of the market. But there are Marxists who have criticized that kind of socialism by saying that somehow socialism and markets are fundamentally incompatible and cannot effectively go together. In fact, if you see a market, they pretty much say you see capitalism. Well, what is Marx's position? Again, there's debate, but let me give you my understanding. In Marx's position, when you read Marx's own writings, he was critical of markets on the one hand, but he was also critical of capitalism on the other, and he didn't equate them. In other words, markets have existed in ancient slavery. We bought and sold slaves back then. In feudalism, lords and serfs often went to markets to market their products, so markets aren't unique to capitalism. You can be critical of a market and you can still accept capitalism and vice versa. So I think Marx's arguments led to some confusion. He was a critic of markets, as were many, many other people at his time. He was also critical of how capitalism organized production so that a small group of people, capitalists, employers, dominated and controlled a large majority of people and were not accountable to them, namely the employees. And that was for him the bigger issue. You didn't need him to criticize markets because lots of people had done that. Critical of the capitalist organization of production, that was much more the breakthrough that Marx achieved. But societies like Russia, China, Cuba, and so on, that tried early on to make experiments in constructing socialism, threw those two things together. They got rid of the employers, private ones anyway, and substituted the government, and they substituted for markets central planning. The government would not only own and operate enterprises, but the government would plan their distribution. No markets, no private capitalist enterprises. That was the rule for Russia, China, Cuba, at least on paper. The reality was, in Russia, China, Cuba, there were always markets. Ironically, the reality is in American society, for example, there has always been planning. There have always been government enterprises that own and operate things like the post office and like public universities and many other things. So the mixture of government and market has always been a mixture. The arguments have acted as though there were extremes, either or, but the reality was a mixed economy. So in my humble opinion, you could take over enterprises as a socialist in the sense of reorganizing them, even going to the extent of getting rid of the employers in a capitalist system and substituting worker co-ops, something that many of you know we advocate, and you could still allow the worker co-ops to deal with one another in a market buy-sell relationship. That would be a kind of market socialism. Perhaps the best way to respond is to say that a transformation of the workplace and a market could coexist with one another. You'd have to adjust them, as every system has, so that they don't undo each other, but coordinate and reinforce one another. But in concept, that should be no problem. We might have reasons not to want that. That's another conversation. But there's no intrinsic either or that has to be worried about here. Marxism can be, and in many ways ought to be, consistent with a transformation of the production process as the primary object, and then to discuss and let to be decided democratically what mechanism of distribution such a transformed production system might want: market, or some planning, or some mixture, which is the most likely, done at the local level, would be a very adequate way of putting Marxism and market socialism together. If videos like this strike you as valuable, please help us, partner with us, share them all over the place. And if you can also share with us some of the financial costs here, that would be very welcome as well.